In 1959, a tiny man-made island off Japan held 5,000 people on 6 hectares, one of the highest population densities ever recorded. In 1974, every one of them left. The buildings stayed. The schools stayed. The gates were welded shut for 35 years. This is Hashima. Hashima sits about a kilometer off the southwest coast of Nagasaki. From the water it looks like an aircraft carrier sitting on the surface of the sea, a flat, walled rectangle of concrete buildings surrounded by a sea wall, with no beach, no trees, no margin. Local fishermen called it *Gunkanjima. Battleship Island. Most of it was built. The original rock outcrop was a third the size of what's there today. Between 1890 and the 1930s, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries bought the rights to the coal seams running under the seabed, extended the island's perimeter with reclaimed land, raised a 12-meter sea wall, and built one of the first reinforced concrete apartment buildings in Japan on top. By 1916, the central residential block was 9 stories of concrete worker housing, the tallest reinforced concrete building in the country at the time. By the 1930s, the island had a school, a hospital, shops, a post office, a Shinto shrine, a Buddhist temple, a swimming pool, and several thousand miners and their families living on top of an active coal mine that ran a kilometer beneath them. In 1959, the population reached its peak, 5,259 people. Land area 6.3 hectares. That works out to roughly 83,500 people per square kilometer. Densities inside the buildings themselves, comparable to the most extreme urban concentrations on the planet. Inside the largest apartment complex on the island, a sprawling staircase-shaped block, families lived in 9 square meter units. Communal toilets per floor, communal baths in the basement. Coal dust everywhere. The mine ran 24 hours a day, 3 shifts. The shafts dropped to 1,000 meters below sea level and extended laterally beneath the seabed. Miners rode elevators down, walked kilometers underground, came up coated in coal dust, washed in the communal baths, and went home to apartments stacked directly above the mine entrance. There was no land, no fields, no trees, no soil. Children grew up on concrete. The school had a rooftop playground because there was nowhere flat at ground level to play. Vegetables came from the mainland. Water came from the mainland. Power came from the mainland. Coal, the one thing the island made, went to the mainland by ship. In typhoon season, waves crashed over the sea wall. Apartment windows on the lower floors were boarded up for days at a time. The buildings shook. Then the storms passed and people went back to work. The island had its own newspaper, its own cinema, its own bars, its own pinball arcade. By the late 1950s, photographs from the island show televisions in nearly every apartment. Household ownership rates that, by some accounts, ran ahead of mainland Tokyo, a self-contained industrial city smaller than 3 Manhattan city blocks sitting on a concrete slab in the East China Sea. Before the post-war peak, during the Second World War, the Mitsubishi mine on Hashima used Korean and Chinese forced labor. That the practice happened is documented and uncontested. Deaths occurred. The labor was not voluntary. The specific figures, how many laborers were brought to the island, how many died, the conditions of their housing relative to the Japanese miners, remain contested between Japanese and Korean historians, drawing on different archival sources and different definitions. When Hashima was nominated for UNESCO World Heritage status in 2015, this history became part of the diplomatic conversation. Japan's nomination focused on the island's role in the Meiji-era Industrial Revolution. Korea objected on the grounds that the forced labor history was not adequately represented. The eventual inscription required Japan to acknowledge the forced labor history at the site itself. The on-site interpretation remains a subject of bilateral disagreement. Hashima's full record includes both the boomtown and what happened on it during the war. The history is one place. In the 1960s, Japan's energy economy switched from coal to oil. Hashima's mine, deep, expensive, dangerous, and producing a fuel the country no longer needed at scale, was no longer viable. The economics had run out. In January 1974, Mitsubishi announced the mine would close. The closure was managed. Workers were offered jobs at other Mitsubishi sites. Families were given relocation support. The school wound down. The hospital wound down. About 90 days after the announcement, the last residents boarded the last ferry to Nagasaki. The lights were turned off. The gates were locked. The city left all at once. The island sat. Typhoons came every year. Saltwater corroded the steel reinforcement inside the concrete. Wave action chipped at the sea wall. Buildings cracked. Floors collapsed. The school's pianos rotted in place. A hospital's surgical theater filled with rain through holes in the roof. For decades, the only people permitted on Hashima were maintenance crews assessing the sea wall and a small number of cleared researchers. Photographers were turned away. Boats were warned off. Among Japanese architectural historians, the island acquired a reputation as a place that should not exist, and a place that was being lost in real time. The buildings stayed. They were just slowly falling apart inside the seal. In 2009, Nagasaki Prefecture began allowing limited tourist access. A small landing platform on the southeastern side, 3 roped walkways. No entry to the buildings. The interior was, and is, considered too unstable to enter. In 2015, UNESCO inscribed Hashima as part of the * sites of Japan's major industrial revolution * over Korean objection, with the forced labor acknowledgement requirement attached. Tourists now come daily, when sea conditions allow. A few of the buildings have been partially stabilized for photographic preservation. Most of the structures continue to fall apart at a pace that engineers and architectural historians estimate will leave the island substantially unrecognizable within decades. Hashima is one of the few places in the world where you can still see, sitting on a slab of reclaimed concrete in the East China Sea, the physical remains of a city that fit 5,000 people onto 6 hectares. The school is still there. The hospital is still there. The shrine is still there. They are slowly falling into the sea. When the buildings are gone, the only record will be photographs. Most of those photographs were taken by a small number of architectural historians who got onto the island during the silent years, before it was reopened when the buildings were already dying. The island held a city. The city left all at once. The buildings remained. They are still leaving.